Today I'm going to show you 3 really common mistakes that you need to avoid when you're trying to make your beats sound more full. So I got this real sensual beat here, the type of beat that makes you want to kiss on someone's neck. But what I want to do is remove 3 elements, just 3 production techniques out of this beat. I want you to hear what a big difference this is going to make. And if we reintroduce those 3 elements back into the beat, you can hear the difference. It's a pretty big difference between these 2 beats. Now what I want to do is cover these 3 elements and how helpful they can be when you're trying to fill up your beat and make it sound finished and complete. By the way, if you enjoy my videos, think about subscribing. If you ever get tired of seeing them on your feed, it's just one click away to unsubscribe, but it really does help my channel out. First up, a big mistake that I see a lot of producers make is a constant desire to grab more sounds, add more instrumentation, more layers into the beat. But as many of you probably heard, simplicity is always key. Constantly adding more and more sounds can easily end up cluttering the beat. But it's hard to know what this means, how to be simple with your beats and still have it sound full and complete at the same time. One way of thinking about simplicity, and one thing that producers tend to overlook, is taking the current sounds that already exist within your beat and getting them to do more of the heavy lifting. Meaning taking your current sounds and have them take up more space. When we're trying to make a beat feel complete, what we need to do is fill up all the different spaces in the beat, whether it be the stereo space, the frequency space, and the depth. And so often when we're trying to fill up these spaces, we try to do this by adding in more sounds, more layers, more instruments into our beat. But oftentimes it can be a better idea to just take what you already have, even if it's just a handful of layers, and have them take up more space in the beat. And this is what simplicity can mean in this context. And we can do this in a bunch of different ways. For one, adding reverb or delay can do a good job in filling up more space in terms of the depth or the stereo space. So whether you choose to add a delay that can help you fill up more of the stereo space, or a reverb that helps you add a good amount of depth, or even both put together, we can start to take our sounds that we have and just make them do more work, take up more space in the beat, and do more of the heavy lifting. And by doing this, we also avoid clutter instead of adding more instruments into the beat that have their own melodies, their own arrangements, and risk stuffing our beat needlessly. But I do want to point out that adding reverb without being deliberate can be very harmful to your beat if not done well. You'll remember in the video that I put out a little while back on how reverbs can end up ruining your beats, I talk about this really important concept. So if you haven't seen that video, I really recommend checking it out. The link is right above my head. Another thing that reverbs and delay do is literally just making the sounds last longer, as obvious as that may seem. If I were to export this one little note here and take a look at how it looks without any effects on top, and we compare how this looks with effects on top, you guys can see the difference here. With effects, this sound just literally lasts longer. So when we are talking about getting your beat to sound full and complete, taking your sounds and have them take up more space time-wise as well in the beat, like we're doing here, is just another way that using reverbs and or delays can be a valuable asset. The second concept that I want to talk about ties into this layer right here. For me, I have a big library of percussion loops that I just like to reach for from time to time, as you guys can see. The reason why this is valuable is that oftentimes we can get stuck into grid-based beat making. Just like how I mentioned in the video that I put out a little while back on getting your beat arrangements to sound more professional, DAWs are set up to be block-based, where we take larger pieces of music and we piece them together based on these grids. And so if you were to come up with your hi-hat pattern, you may just use your channel rack and fill up all these little squares and just move on with your beat. But the good thing about using percussion loops is that they can easily provide you with a rhythm in your beat that's atypical, something that you might not have even thought of yourself. And this can go a long way in filling up your beat just by virtue of having more complex layers, rhythmically speaking, in your beat. For example, if I were to open up Fruity Slicer, and I were to just import one of these percussion loops into my beat here, You can see we have notes here that don't necessarily sit flush on my grid, like these notes right here. Personally, I never would have thought of programming something like this. A lot of the times when we come up with our percussive layers, we just program something simple like this and then we just move on. But here, using this loop instead, we have more notes playing quantity-wise, and just by virtue of this being a bit more dense and a little bit more complex as well, it can be yet another way that we can fill our beat. So I recommend just going to your favorite sample website and finding a bunch of percussion loops and having them handy in your library. And a little hack that you can use, a technique that can be really helpful, is to just use them as a frame of reference by using their MIDI notes if you'd like. Meaning if you don't actually like the instrumentation within your percussive loop, but you like how it feels rhythmically in your beat, you can throw it into Fruity Slicer and just slice it up like we just did here. And you can cut the MIDI and paste it into the piano roll for a sound that you actually do like and you do want to use. And at this point you would open up the note limiter, set the range to be one note like we did here. Most likely it's going to be C5 that you'll use, and there you go. You basically imported the rhythm from your loop, but it will play using the sound that you actually like and you want to use in your beat. And finally, the third concept that I want to talk about, one common error that we all might make when we're trying to make our beats. This one might sound a bit strange. When we're in the process of making music, don't think that everything has to be super musical, or that the more musical the better. Again, this sounds kind of weird, but let me explain. A lot of the times when I do my beat reviews, producers tend to throw melodies and counter melodies and arrangements that can go in and out of their beats that sit on top of their main loop. And they do this with this exact intention in mind, trying to figure out ways to fill up their beat and have it sound more complete and full. But again, something like this can be easily more harmful than it is helpful. If your main loop, your main idea is already very melodic, and you throw in yet another layer that's also very melodic, very musical, it can be difficult to do a good job of finding a good balance in between these two layers. And oftentimes what happens is that these layers end up competing against each other, and this is how clutter can easily occur, by having two ultra melodic arrangements occur at the exact same time. And this might be something that we're all guilty of, because after all, we are making music. We want to use those abilities that we worked so hard on improving, like creating complex melodies. But we need to do what's best for the beat, even if it means being more simple and not using our entire skill set at all times. When the situation calls for it, what I tend to do is introduce small amelodic sounds into the beat as a means of filling up the beat instead. If I just isolate these layers here, you guys can hear. We have these little sounds going in and out throughout the beat, and they're not really musical at all. They're basically just one-shots. And this does two important things in my view. For one, like I mentioned, it can help us fill our beat in a well-balanced way. Not going super melodic all the time and introducing something simple like this can be a better choice if the situation calls for it. But on top of that, the second reason why this is helpful is because these small little sounds like this, they can go a long way in introducing a lot more character into your beats. Notice the sounds that I chose here that are kind of unusual. I could have easily reached for a piano and some side sticks and went down the road of using straightforward sounds to fill up my beat. But instead, I chose sounds that I thought were cool to me, that sounded unique. And these small little details can be ways of introducing your own personality into the beat. In my Discord, sometimes I see producers struggling with how to get their own sounds, how they can start making beats that sound more unique to them. And these small little details like this, these tiny production decisions that you make in these types of situations can be ways of accomplishing exactly that. And you can hear this being done by a lot of different producers. When you hear a Timbaland beat, he will throw in weird sounds like frogs and babies and all sorts of other creatures into his beat. So foregoing the typical and introducing something that sounds cool and unique to you can be a great way of not only filling up your beat, but doing so in a way that's more original, and you can start to foster your own sound by doing this. So those are the three elements that I think producers need to know when they're trying to fill up their beats and make them sound more complete and full. If you guys have enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. My online course is coming out really soon. You do not want to miss out on this, so join the waitlist if you want early access as well as a discount only available to waitlist members. My free drum kit's available in the description box below as always, as well as a link to the Discord if you want your beats reviewed live. I do that every so often, and I will see you guys next time.